I sang, as soon as I was able to speak, as far as and my brothers kid me now. They say, soon we're gonna read somewhere that you were singing in the womb. Every time you talk about this, it gets earlier and earlier. But I was singing by the time I was able to speak, humming tunes and sort of doing stuff like that. I just knew that there were people who would applaud if I sang, and these were people in my own home. And that my neighbor would call me from across the street, and she'd say, you've got such a pretty little voice. Why don't you sing something for me? And I was content to sit on her steps. Mrs. Hubert was quite old, and she'd say, well, sing Jesus Loves Me. You like that song. And I'd sing it for her, and she'd pat me on the shoulder and say, that was real pretty. I like it when you sing. And I would go home just as happy as anything. I mean, that was as good as anything that could happen all day long.
But probably the things that hurt the most was I wanted my children to look up to me as their father first. But I wanted them to look at me as their hero. I didn't have a hero when I was growing up. I didn't have a father. My father died when I was 8. But I think it was a heart attack. It's funny, because back in the 60s, everybody seemed like when someone died. It was like heart attack, heart attack, heart attack. Everyone was a heart attack. My older sister, she said, Dad died of a broken heart. Being older now, I know what she meant by a broken heart. And he couldn't provide the way he would like to have, it's still stuck in the back of my head that he died of a broken heart. And I basically grew up without a father. Had an older brother. He went in the military. I remember the first time I saw his uniform. To me, I mean, wow. Look at all those buttons and all those ribbons. And being from a little small farming town, I never seen something like that. The local police, didn't you know? It wasn't a real sharp type. Nice dress, your tie, your gig, your gun belt sticks and shine, your shoes. It wasn't anything like out here or your big metropolitan cities where you look sharp. But his uniform, it was impressive.
We weren't raised like this. We weren't raised with no black or white thing. We were raised with all kinds of friends. Mexicans, Indians, blacks, whites, Chinese. Who thought this would happen to us? I guess there's a first time for everything, I guess you want me to tell you the story. I don't think you will understand, and sometimes I'm just not in the mood, just not in the mood. His brother, Galen, called to say, the cops done beat Glenn up, talking about Rodney. I said, what? The cops, they got it on tape. And when I was just turning the channels, I saw this white car. I heard him holler, and I recognized him laying there on the ground. Now, that's what got me. And he looks just like his father, too. Galen was the one used to favor his father. Now, Rodney looks just like him, identical. I don't know if it's when you lose a life, it comes back into someone else, but you should have seen it. It was a hell of a look. Went through 3 plastic surgeons just to get Rodney to look like Rodney again. I tell him he has a lot to be thankful for. A hell of a lot. He couldn't talk, just dirt. I said, God damn, my brother's son out there looking like hell. I know what I saw on that bed, and I was going to fight for every bit of our justice and fairness. That officer, Coon, that's the one in the whole trial. That man showed no kind of remorse at all. You know that? And his sister like, it ain't no big thing, and I'll do it again. And he smiles at you. The nerve, the audacity. You see everybody raised when something happens with the president, because he's a higher sword. Okay, but here, it's a nobody. But the way they beat him, this is the way I felt towards him. Do you understand what I'm saying now? You do? All right.
very interesting thing happened. Like a week and a half. Maxine Waters calls me up. You know who she is? We're very good friends. She calls me up and she says, "You gotta come with me. I've been going down to Nickerson Gardens, and the cops come in and break up these gang meetings. And these are gang meetings for the purpose of truces. Pay attention." The next Saturday afternoon, the next day even, I go down with her to Nickerson Gardens. And I see a whole bunch of police cars, sirens, the lights, and I say, "What the hell's going on here?" So sure enough, I pull in there. We pull in there. And I ask a cop, "What's going on?" And he says, "Well, we got a call for help. There's a gang meeting over there, there's a community park there, and there's a gym." We go down to the gang meeting, and about half of them outside the gym, and half of them inside. And here's about 100 cops lined up over here, and about another 100 cops lined up over here. And I go into the group of gang members who are outside. Even Maxine got scared by this. I gotta tell you, I was brought up in Harlem. I just have a feel for what I can do and what I can't do. And I did that. I spent about two hours talking to these guys. Some of these guys were ready to kill me. I'm the police commissioner, and therefore a cop, and therefore all the things that went along with being a cop. Very interesting experience, God knows. One guy who was really disheveled and disjointed and disfigured opens up his whole body, and it's clear he's been shot across. You know, not that day, months or years before. And you know, these guys, they've been through the wars down there. And, you know, I spent enough time with them that I could get talking with them and maybe get some insights. But the cops were mad. They were real mad that I would go talk with them and not talk with them. And I knew that if I went and talked with them, that I was going to have problems here. But I also knew, as I was doing this, that they were going to be pissed. 2 days I get a letter. The letter really pleased me in some ways. It was very respectful. You went in and talked to our enemy. Gangs are their enemy. So I went down and marched down to the 77th, and I said, "Fuck you. I can come in here anytime I want and talk to you." Yeah, at roll call. I said, "This is a shot I had at talking to these curious people about whom I know nothing. And I want to learn. Don't you want me to learn about them?" Yeah, you know, that kind of thing. At the same time, I'd been on this kick. As I told you before, of fighting for what's right for the cops. Because they haven't gotten what they should. The city has abused both sides. The city has abused the cops. Don't ever forget that. If you want me to give you an hour on that, I'll give you an hour on that. And at the end, I knew I hadn't won when they said, "Which side are you on?" When I said my answer was, "Why do I have to be on a side? You know, why do I have to be on a side? There's a problem here."
And then my grandfather, Encarnacion, was a gringo hater. Because he had run-ins with gringos when he was riding. He had been a rebel. So you see, there was another twist. He had rode with Villa and those people And he remembers when he fought the gringos, when they went into Chihuahua. Pershing went in there to chase Villa and all that. So I grew up with all this rich stuff at home. And in school, first grade, they started telling me I was inferior because I was a Mexican. And that's where I knew from a young age, I realized I had an enemy. And that enemy was those nice white teachers.
I wonder what it is. Why? Did I have this madness? That I understood this? It's not an enemy I hated. It's not a hate thing. The insanity I carried with me started when I took the beating from the police. Okay, that's where the insanity came in. In 42, when I was in my teens, running around as a zoot suiter, one night, cops really tore me up bad. One of them said something about my mama. I turned around, I threw a punch at one of them. I didn't hit him hard, but that sealed my doom. They took me to a room, and there were 4 cops, 4 guys there, kicking me in the head. As a result of the kicks in the head, they fractured my eardrum, and I couldn't hear on both ears. I was deaf, worse than I am now.
So, from that day on, I had a hate in me. Even now, I don't like to hate, never do. Just like my Uncle Abraham told me that to hate is to waste energy and you mess with the man upstairs. I used to read the paper. It's awful. It's awful. If I would read about a cop shot down in the street, killed, dead, a human being, a fellow human being, I say, so so what? Maybe he's one of those motherfuckers that you know. I'm hooked on the news at 6 and newspapers. And every morning, I read injustices. And poor Margaret has to put up with me.
Because I rave and I rant and I walk around here. I gotta eat breakfast with her. I can't eat breakfast with her because I tell her, these goddamn Peckerwoods. So she puts me out there. But I don't hate rednecks and Peckerwoods. And when I moved in here, it's all Peckerwoods. I had to take out my big Mexican flag out of my van. Oh heck, I've got my pride.
I told my kids a long time ago fears that I had. Not physically inferior, not a physical fear, not a physical fear. And that's the other thing. I grew up with the idea that whites are physically, you see, I still get that. See, that's a prejudice. That whites are physically inferior, physically afraid of minorities, people of color, blacks, and Mexicans. It's a mental thing. It's a mental thing that they're physically afraid. I can still see it. I can still see it. And I love to see it. I love to see it. It's just how I am. I can't help it. I can't help myself when I see the right person do the right thing. If I see the right white guy or the right Mexican walk down a mall, And the whites, you know, they go into their thing already. But you see, I still have that prejudice against whites. But I'm not a racist. But I do have white friends, though. But I don't even see them as whites. I don't even see them as whites. And my boys, I told them, if anything happens, put your hands up. Cooperate, man. Be sure to tell me who they are. And let them say whatever they want about you. But they never told me who they were. My oldest son, Rudy, will tell you about it. Didn't they, Margaret? Didn't they insult him? And they also pulled you over. The Alhambra cops, they pulled you over. And, oh man, my enemy.
I was scared to death. I've never been as scared, as frightened in my life. And it was a very different fear than I've ever felt before. I mean, I was really afraid. At a certain point, it dawned on us that they might try to attack the row, the sororities and the fraternities, because they did do that during the Watts riots. And they went into the house where they smashed the windows. I don't know where we got that information, but somebody knew that. So that spread in the house real fast. And once we realized that, we started packing. We'd all packed a bag and we'd all put on our tennis shoes. This was late in the evening. And we all sat in our hallways upstairs, very small hallways. And we all said, okay, if they come to the front door, this is what we're gonna do. Many things I can tell you. First of all, my parents were on their way to drive to California to take part in a caravan in which they bring old cars, old 40s cars, a whole bunch of them, all their friends, a huge club. They all drive their cars around the country. My dad has an old car. It's a 41 Cadillac. I told him to turn around and go home. I said, go home, Mom. All I can think of, one bottle, one shear for one bottle on my father's car, he will die. He will die. He collects a lot of cars. He has about 15 different kinds of cars at home. This is his thing. This is what he does. And he's got Lincoln Continentals and the different town and countries, all 40s. His favorite is a 41 Cadillac. He keeps them from around 5 to 10 years, you know, depending on whether you can get a good value for them. It's a business as well as a hobby. And so I don't specifically know which one he came out in, but one of them. And those are his pride and joys. They are perfect. They're polished. They're run perfect. They are perfect. And all I can think of is a bottle getting anywhere near it.
Barbara, could you get me the coroner's report, please? Latasha hit Mrs. Dew in the face 4 times very viciously, and she knocked her down twice. I mean, this fight was no contest. I'll take the girl. I'll take the girl. Now, this little girl, didn't you think she was much smaller? Misleading. She was 5'6" and 152 pounds, and she beat the hell out of this lady. Let's take a look at the evidence. This is enhanced tape because it had been used so many times as a surveillance tape. It would have cost $300,000 to get in any better quality than this. Now let's take a look. Boom! Right there in the face. Boom! Latasha knocks Mrs. Dew down, and she goes to get the orange juice. Mrs. Dew goes onto the counter to get the gun. Latasha brings the orange juice to the counter, and she sees Mrs. Dew with the gun. She runs. Boom! Blood and brains everywhere. The forensics report says it was 30 feet away. Is it that sad? Is it life cheap?
We found it very unusual that Charles Lloyd, the top black attorney in this city, would take this case. But for him to defend a Korean woman in the death of a black child, I guess he just sold his card because he is not a card-carrying member of our community or of any of us as a nation of people any longer. He's a sellout. I guess that's the best way to put it. Because you and I know, as black people, that if we went out and we killed a Korean child, shot them in the back of the head, and it was videotaped, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
How am I a sellout? How am I an Uncle Tom? A lot of this is just plain old jealousy. I learned that as a child. Whoever had money in the town, doctors, morticians, it's like actresses. People say that actresses are fickle, but I've never heard of an actress be any more fickle than anyone else. And you got that going for you with lawyers. I mean, what looks good on a lawyer that's black and brown? A Doberman, a vicious Doberman. Why won't a snake bite a lawyer? Professional courtesy. What does a lawyer do when he dies? He lies still. You get that one? He lies still. Now let's take a look at the ballistics report. I mean, a woman accosted a child for shoplifting. How is that a political case? Head trigger. Head trigger? That's an old West term. And men know a lot about that more than women. External examination has revealed evidence of disassembly. The wrong screws were reassembled. Dry firing of this weapon reveals that the hammer can be pushed off without pulling the trigger. Hitting the hammer in full cock will discharge this firearm without pulling the trigger. This firearm must be classified as unsafe. They made it political. If Latasha was killed by a black woman, you would have never seen this in the black of the papers. It's just such a common occurrence.
You know, this might sound a little racist on my part, and I don't even care anymore, but all those Koreans look the same. Little short women with little round faces and little short haircuts. Soon Ja-do could have gone on a plane any day, anywhere, and no one would have noticed. And so we were like, hey, she could leave today. She needs to be in jail. She needs to be in jail. So we marched and we started. No justice, no peace. There were 2 children who were eyewitnesses to Latasha's death. And they both testified that Latasha begged Mrs. Du to let her go, that she wasn't trying to steal the orange juice. And Latasha laid dead with $2 in her hand. If the white media chooses not to print something out about what happens to us, we won't know. And that's why I think it's important that we go around the country and let it be known. Because justice denied Latasha Harlins is justice denied every American citizen. And the settling of Soon Ja-do, a $500 fine, restitution of the funeral expenses. You can't bury a dog in LA for $500. Latasha's funeral cost $7,000. We think it's to tune the $1 billion it cost the city April 20, the 9th. Because no matter what anyone thinks, the injustice of what happened to Rodney King, it just coincides as it parallels between Rodney and Latasha.
We lived in apartment A6, right next to A8, which is where George Holliday lived. And the next thing I know is 10 or 12 police officers made a circle around Rodney King, and they started to hit him. And I remember that they just not only hit him with sticks, but they also kicked him. And one police officer even pummeled his fist into his face, and they were kicking him. And we were like, oh my goodness. And I was just watching, and I felt like, oh my goodness, because it was really like he was in danger there. And it was just such an oppressive atmosphere. I knew it was wrong. Whatever he did, I knew it was wrong. I just knew in my heart, this is wrong. They can't do that. And even my husband was petrified. My husband was trying to get me to come inside and away from the scene, but I said no. I said, we have to stay here and watch because this is wrong. And he was just petrified. He grew up in a country where this is prevalent. Police abuse is prevalent in Mexico. So we stayed and we watched the whole thing. And I was scheduled to testify. And I was kind of upset at the outcome because I had a lot to say. And I was just really upset. And I had received a subpoena. And I told the prosecutor, I said, when do you want me to go? And he says, I'll call you later and give you a time. And the time came and went, and he never called. So I started calling him. I said, well, are you going to call me or not? And he goes, I can't really talk to you, and I don't think we're going to be using you because it contradicts what the highway patrol said. And I faxed him a letter, and I told him that those officers were going to be acquitted. And I told him, if you do not put witnesses, if you do not put a single resident to testify and say what they saw, that those officers were going to be acquitted. But I really believe that the prosecution was dead set on that video, and that video would tell all. But you see, that video doesn't show you where those officers went and assaulted Rodney King in the beginning. You see that? And I was so upset. I told my coworker, I said, I had a terrible dream that those guys were acquitted. And she goes, oh no, they're not going to be acquitted. She goes, you shouldn't think like that. And I said, I wasn't thinking. I had a dream. I just had this dream. And in my heart felt, and I saw the men in the courtroom, and it was just, I had it in my heart. Something is happening. And I heard they were acquitted. Yeah, I do have dreams that come true, but not as vividly as this one. I said, look at this. They were acquitted because dreams are made out of some kind of indelible substance. And my coworker said, you shouldn't think like this. And I said, I wasn't thinking. It was a dream. And that's all. And it came to pass.
Powell holds the baton like this. And that is not good. The proper way of holding a baton is like this. So, when people keep talking about why did it take 56 baton blows, the whole thing boils down to Powell has no strength and no force behind his baton strikes because he was weak and inefficient with his baton training. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Prior to this, we lost upper body control holds in 1982. If we had upper body control holds, this tape never would have been on. This incident would have lasted about 15 seconds. Now, the reason we lost upper body control holds because we had something like 17 to 20 deaths in a period of about 1975, 76 to 1982. And they said it was associated with, it was being used on blacks, that blacks were dying. Now, the so-called community leaders, they came forward and complained. And they were the ones that started the hysteria about upper body control holds, that it was an inhumane use of force. And Gilbert Lindsay, who's a really neat man, when he saw a demonstration on the baton, he said, "You're not gonna beat my people with the baton. I want you to use the chokehold on them." And some other people said, "I don't care. You beat them into submission. You break bones. You're not choking them anymore. And so, the political framework was laid for eliminating upper body control holds. And Daryl Gates, I believe, but I can't prove, but his attitude suggests that. I started seeing a lot of cases similar to Rodney King, some identical to Rodney King. And I said, we gotta start exploring some alternative uses of force. And their reaction? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. The last conversation I had was with my commander. I said, we gotta start looking at techniques and we gotta start looking at new options. His response to me? Sergeant Duke, I'm tired of hearing this shit. We're gonna beat people into submission. We're gonna break bones. And he said that the police commission and city council were responsible for taking this away from us. Do I make myself clear, Sergeant Duke? And I said, yes, sir. And I never brought it up again. And that, to me, tells me that this is an in-your-face to the city council and police commission. And like I said, I can't prove this, but I believe Daryl Gates and the command staff were going to do an in-your-face to the city council and police commission, saying, you took upper body control holds away from us. Now, we're really going to show you what you're going to get.
When we went into the courtroom with the verdicts, there were plainclothes policemen everywhere. You know, I knew there would be people unhappy with the verdict, but I didn't expect near what happened. If I had known what was going to happen, I mean, it's not fair to say I would have voted a different way. I wouldn't have, but I would have written a note to the judge saying, I can't do this because of what it put my family through. Excuse me. So anyway, we were going out to the bus, and the policeman says right away, if there's rocks and bottles, don't worry, the glass on the bus is bulletproof. And it's a sheriff bus. They lock prisoners in. And there's some obnoxious reporters out there, and the policemen are trying to get us into the bus and cover our faces, and this obnoxious reporter from Channel 11 News says, why are you hiding your heads in shame? Don't you know buildings are burning and people are dying in South LA because of you? And then watching TV and seeing the political leaders, Mayor Bradley, President Bush, condemning our verdicts. I mean, the jurors as a group we tossed around, was this a setup of some sort? We just feel like we were pawns, thrown away by the system. I mean, the judge, most of the jurors, when he was reading the verdicts, felt like we could sense a look of disdain on his face. I mean, he said beforehand that when the verdicts came out, he would like to come up and talk to us. And when he finally got them, he set someone up and said he really didn't want to do that then. He had the right and power to withhold our names for a period of time. He did not do that. He released them right away. A lot of newspapers published our addresses. The New York Times published the values of our homes. We received threatening phone calls and letters. We didn't answer the phone because it was just every 3 minutes. One of the most disturbing things, and a lot of the jurors said that the thing that bothered them the most, more than anything else more than the threats was a letter from the KKK saying, "We support you, and if you ever wanted to join our organization, we'd welcome you into the fold." And we all just were, no! Oh! God!
The bottom line is, I believe there is extraordinary justice. Not that it happens day in and day out, but our court, the real court, where we judge these cases, where I experienced the riots, where my family did, for the first time in my entire life, I was terrified because I sat here. It began at the corner of the Big Five. I was standing there, just having mailed my daughter's registration to Berkeley. What better stroke? And I was standing there when the first cars rolled by. And this was like 1:30 in the afternoon. And I saw a kid with a 9, and he brought it up. He didn't aim it directly at me, but he said, "I'm gonna kill you, motherfucker," or "You're dead, motherfucker," or something like that. Right here, right on the corner. I sat back down like my ass was filled with cement. Right on the corner. Right here. Bada boom. That's when they pulled into the Big Five lot, at that time, moments before, I heard screams. So I started across the street. It's a 3-way, and I looked down toward the Jewish Federation, but I didn't see it. I didn't see anything happening. That's when these cars rolled up. Exactly a week later, in the LA Times, was this unbelievable story about that these 2 cars pulled up to the curb, and a girl, there were 3 teenage girls in the first car, got out with a 2x4 and smacked the guy right in the head. Smacked him right in the head. Did you hear this story?
It was like the end of the world. It was like a whole other time. It was a major disaster, man-made, a catastrophe. You know what I mean? That was a devastation. I mean, the violence, the destruction, the terror. I mean, that's something. I mean, I haven't seen a movie like that.
When I heard about the verdict, it wasn't until about 5:30. I immediately headed downtown to Parker Center. As I was driving down the Santa Monica freeway, I had one interesting mini experience that told me there was going to be trouble. Very simple thing. There was a nice black recent BMW, a small car, in good shape. And there was an African-American woman driving it, and a man sitting next to her, also African-American. And her window was open, and she had a hammer in her hand as she was driving, waving it out the window, up and down, as she was driving. It was a very dramatic thing. And in a minor way, it said to me, trouble. As I pulled into the garage at the Parker Center, it was about 6:30. And there's Daryl Gates getting into his car. And so I asked, where you going? I got something I gotta do. That was the only answer he gave me. As you may have heard, turned out he was headed to some fundraiser, right up here in Brentwood. In the meantime, after he heads out, I get through with this thinking, what the hell is going on with that guy? He's the chief. And this thing very well may be falling apart.
I've tried to maintain that in talking to people about the riots, that you had a vast, even Shakespearean range of motives. And I remember somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock, we began to get some rocks hitting the windows on the 3rd floor. So I went downstairs with a couple of copy messengers. I grabbed a pair of scissors. A guy looked like he was coming in. I shouted at him with the scissors. My wife is an emergency room doctor. And she said, because she feels she's considerably more in tune with the type of people that go around with scissors and other weapons. She said, why don't you go upstairs and work with the copy? Because you might not do very well with the type of people you seem to want to be running with. But I wasn't about to be stopped, because there was a clear sense of clearly big and dreadful things were happening.
Because what took place here, Southern California was rocked. You know, I mean the whole infrastructure. The foundation was cracked. You know what I mean? The seams of that fine fabric, that Los Angeles image that we have, that California, that sunshine, you know? See, we showed the insides, the core. Follow what I'm saying? That which is usually bypassed or overlooked. It came forward. It let it be known.
I think this thing between the Koreans and the blacks wasn't altogether true. I think that the Korean stores that got burnt in the black neighborhoods that were Korean owned is due to the lack of not getting to know the people coming into your store. That what that was now. They're talking about looting in Koreatown. Those wasn't blacks. Those wasn't blacks. Those were Mexicans in Koreatown. We wasn't over there looting over here. But here. In this right here, the stores that got looted for this one reason only, is that know who you going, just know the people coming into your store. That's all. Respect the people coming in there. Give them their money instead of just, give me your money and get out of my face. And it was the same thing with the 65 riots, the same thing. In this, they kept making the Koreans and the blacks. Now, I didn't see that. And I see like Pep Boys, that right there. I didn't like the idea of Pep Boys myself. I didn't like the idea of them hitting up Pep Boys. The only reason why I think they hit them is they too damn high. Now, I didn't loot this time. Get that out. Because in my mind, it was more than that. You know, I didn't loot this time, but I was praising the ones who had. You ought to burn that sucker down. And after it was over, we went touring, called it touring. We went all around, and we went to that Magan store, seeing people coming out of that Magan store. I'm so damn mad at that Parmoyer. He's a damn newscaster. He was on Channel 7. Now that sucker's on Channel 4. Making $8 million. What the hell? A person can make $8 million for reading a damn paper? But that's a different story. Highest in any newscaster. I don't know why. Just to read a damn paper? I don't give a damn who tells me the news. Long as they could talk, long as I could understand them. But that's a different story.
For us to go in there looting, I said I'll go in there and help you out then. It was the second day when everything had started. The first day, we was just like out, cruising around, looking at the things being looted and stuff. And the second day, that's when we were right here, and he said, let's go across the street and see what we can get. You know, like the cops wasn't doing nothing. So we said, oh, I guess it's okay. So we went. We went across the street. That's where we got the beds from. We just got like 2 beds, and then we got them here. They were bunk beds. They were bunk beds. And my neighbors, I guess, went and told on me. And my dad, he was the one that, and my mom, they didn't really want the beds here. So, I was gone. I was out that day. And when I came back, they wasn't here no more. They just told me they took them to a church we used to go to before.
We didn't really even start it, not even to notice about each other, until a couple of weeks after. For example, we were interested in what was going on. You know, for example, the Rodney King incident. But it didn't happen at that present moment. A lot of people didn't know what was going on. Many people were just there, because other people were there. That was it. They didn't know why. I'm pretty sure most of the Hispanics didn't even know why. Because basically, the Rodney King basically came out on channels 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. And basically, no Hispanic news people really came out with it. Not until after the incidents. Not until after the riots started. Basically, a lot of Hispanics didn't even know.
Anyways, we went to Magnin, and we seen people run in there and looted. It's on Wilshire. Very exclusive store for very, you know. You have to have money to go in there and buy something. And the people I seen running out that didn't have money to buy. And I turned on the TV. Here's Mr. Parmoyer saying, yeah, some people looted Magnin. I remember going to that store when I was a child. And what he called them? He called them thugs. These thugs going into that store. Well, I say, hell with you, asshole. That was I say, okay, for them to go run into these other stores, you know, but don't go into no store that I grew up, that my parents has took me to, that's expensive. These stores ain't supposed to be looted. How dare you loot a store that rich people go to? I mean the nerve of them. I found that very offensive. Who the hell he think he is? But that's another story. They looting over here, but as soon as they loot a store that he went to, he was all pissed. That just makes me sick. Ooh, that's another story.
There was still the uneasiness that was growing when the fuse was still burning, but it was business as usual, basically. You got such and so on line 1, such and so on line 2, traffic, Wilshire, Santa Monica. A bunch of us had to go to lunch at the Grill in Beverly Hills. Major show business, dead center business restaurant. Kinda loud, but genteel. There was an incipient panic. You could just feel the tension in the restaurant. Was palpable, was tangible. You could cut it with a knife. Everywhere is all anyone was talking about. You could hear little bits of information. Did you hear? Did you hear? It's like we were transmitting thoughts to each other all across the restaurant. We were transmitting thoughts to each other. All the, frankly, the white, upper class, upper middle class, the definition is white, successful, spending too much money, too good a restaurant, that sort of thing. We were just getting ourselves into a frenzy. And I think a lot of it had to do with just generic guilt. So on the drive back, and it's about a 10-minute drive, talking about the need for guns to protect ourselves. It had just gone from there to there. But I'm telling you, nothing happened. I mean, I don't mean to tell you that somebody in the restaurant got into a fight or somebody screamed at someone, just nothing, Caesar salad, da-da-da. But it went like this. We walked in from the underground garage into here, and we looked at each other, and we could see people running around. Instead of people run fast in this business, but now they were running. And we looked at ourselves, we gotta close the office. So we had gone from, I'm a little nervous, to, we gotta close the office, shut down. This is a business. We don't shut down.
Did you hear what happened to me because of being at the Beverly Hills Hotel? I don't know if you know, but I do a lot of publicity and a lot of television, all the time. I mean, they call me to Washington. I've been on 60 Minutes. I've had silicone injections, and I had 36 surgeries on my face. I'll show you. This is some of the PR that I do. I started the fight for silicone, making it illegal. A lot of interviews, and they interviewed me when the hotel closed because I ate lunch there every day for 36 years. Or ate lunch there for 36 years. But apparently, I'm diversing. I was also married to Gig Young, and there was a big scandal, and they wrote a book about him. So they interviewed me for that. So when they call me to interview me, I'm never sure what it's going to be for. Whether it's real estate, which I love to do. Silicone I do to help other people because I was such a victim. I was paralyzed for 1 year. My face was like this and my eye was like that. They went and drilled a hole in my head, went into my bone and put bone marrow here. I've had 18 surgeries on this eye. This was a 15-hour surgery. I almost died. And I just said, what can I give back to the world? Because of what? All I had was injections to give me cheekbones, nothing more. You'll read about it. So I decided I would do interviews to keep women and men from having silicone injected into their bodies. It belongs in cars. So I went on this crusade in between my work. So I'm used to doing television. I'm pretty good. And I would never hurt anybody, do anything wrong. But apparently, when I did my interview, it didn't come out right. So I had a date, and he lives about 20 minutes away in the valley, and they say, don't drive on freeways. And I said, are you going to see me tonight? Because I was just 3 weeks separated, and I don't want to be alone. And he said, yeah. So he came to pick me up. And when he got there, I said, oh my God, where are we going to go? We can't eat anywhere. Everything's closed. And then I said, wait a minute. A hotel wouldn't be closed. They got to be serving food. So I said, let's see if we can go to the Beverly Hills Hotel. And when I got there, much to my shock, the whole town picture business people had decided to do the same thing. So what happened, the 3 or 4 days of heavy rioting, everyone was going to the hotel. And I mean, it was mobbed. So we'd stay there till 3 or 4 in the morning. Everyone was talking. What's going on in our town, and how could this happen in California, and these poor people, and totally down and down and down. So when they interviewed me for the closing of the Polo Lounge, I went there 36 years for lunch. I wrote my book there. Well, my book starts out, and as I drove my car to the Beverly Hills Hotel. And during the riots, because it was the foremost on my mind, and I was talking about how we were all there. Some man wrote me a letter. To Miss Young, you really are an asshole to be taking life so lightly. I saw your interview on television. As far as I'm concerned, you're a dumb shit bimbo, talking about having fun during the riots at the Polo Lounge. How stupid can you be? I mean, oh my God! I'm reading this letter. I got it 3 weeks ago. That's when the lounge closed. It was like, oh my God. If only he'd left his number so that I could call him and explain that in no way did I mean to be flippant about the riots on television. It was just like people hanging out together. So then you say to yourself, well, let me put this out of my mind and go on for a while, like safety in numbers. No one could hurt us at the Beverly Hills Hotel because it was like a fortress. So that was the mood at the lounge. Here we are, and, you know, we're still here, and we hope there'll be people alive when we come out.
Black, gray, I like to, oh, you know what I mean? black rage. And when I look at that video and see how upset the blacks were, they were upset. Extremely upset. I look at now, since I've been home, I look at all the vacant lots. They tore up a lot of stuff. No wonder they were so upset, huh? It was like a storm, like the eye of a storm. You know, it was a whirlwind, and I was in the eye of it. Know what I'm saying? Know how a tornado kicks up the winds like that? You gotta realize, the not guilty verdict was heavy on everybody's minds. I followed the crowd because I wanted to see if justice worked. And on that particular day, justice didn't work. Yes, I was upset. I was highly upset. That could have been me out there getting my ass whooped. And these 4 officers could have gotten away from whooping my ass like that? I'm afraid not. I wasn't raised to take no ass whooping like that and turn the other cheek. I refused.
And rocks. Oh, of which these are souvenirs, were being tossed in. Oh, and later on in the night, one person threw a makeshift Molotov cocktail. We got a call from our stringer in Beirut. And you know you've got some trouble in your city when your stringer from Beirut calls to say, are you all right?
Anna, this is the beginning of the riots, and this is the video we're going to be giving you for your show. Now, watch this. Anna, this is absolutely, I think, disgraceful. Here's a gang member here. This is a live broadcast, by the way. These poor... He fell like a sack of potatoes. I mean, real brave men, right? Now, these women here, you'll see them later, are taking pictures of this. This is sick. So, this is the video that I'm gonna give you for your show. I'm gonna fast forward here because you can see him getting up and nobody's helping him. These 2 men. Try to help him. Football tells him something. Get away, okay? Look at this decrepit old man, and look at these clowns here. Anybody with any kind of heart would go over and try and help. Here's Reginald Denny passing by. If you saw an animal being beaten, you would go over and help. Okay, here's a black man going and helping. I think his name is Larry Tarvo, Tarvo, and this gentleman here is getting his glasses and trying to help him, and he risked his life doing that. Now you'll see Reginald Denny, and I look at this, and each time I see this, I get angrier and angrier because there was no reason for this to have happened. Okay, here's another animal videotaping this guy. These people have no heart. These people don't deserve to live. Sorry for getting so emotional, but I mean, this is not my United States anymore. This is sicko. Did you see him shoot him? Did you see that? This is like being in a war zone. Here's the guy with the gun. Pulls out the rifle. You see the shot? He missed him. He missed Reginald Denny, but he doesn't even run across the street.
I mean, you go through life and you always want to make your mark or leave your mark to show that you passed through this, through life. You understand what I'm saying? Never in my wildest dreams did I think that something like this would have happened in order for me to make my mark, leave my mark. I mean, I'm up there with Martin and Malcolm. And to have my name uttered in the same breath as those 2 gentlemen, I'm talking about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, that's heavy.
First of all, I don't think it was a fundraiser. I don't think it was a fundraiser at all. It was a group of people who were in opposition to Proposition F. We're talking about long-term support. People who came out and supported me right from the beginning of this controversy. When people were trying to get me to retire and everything else. Real strong supporters of mine. And they begged me to be there. And I said I would. And this was before we knew the verdicts were coming in. And I didn't want to go. I didn't like those things. I don't like them at all. But strong supporters. And I said, I'll drop by for a little while. I'll drop by. And so I had a commitment. And I'm a person who tries very hard to keep commitments. And somewhere along the line, better sense should have prevailed. Not because it would have changed the course of events in any way, shape, or form. It wouldn't have. When things were getting to the point that we were having some serious problems, I was almost there. My driver said, "We're almost there, Chief, we're almost there." My intent was to drop in and say, "Hey, I think we got a riot blossoming. I can't stay, I gotta get out of here." And that's basically what I did. My intent was to say, "Hey, I gotta get out of here." Say hi, and that's what I intended to do. And it's awful hard to break away. I kept walking toward the door. People want a picture, shake your hands, and it took longer than I thought.
Memo goes out saying, "Office closed for the day. Everyone please leave the office." And I remember hearing somebody say, "Did you hear? They're burning down the Beverly Center." By the way, they. No, there is no who. It's just, what do you mean who? No, just they. They are burning down the Beverly Center. Okay, fair enough, they. It almost didn't matter who. It's irrelevant. It's somebody. It's not us. That was one of the highlights for me. So we're looking outside, and the traffic is far worse, and people basically flee in the office, and we're closing the blinds, and the vision of these yuppies, the aged yuppies, Armani suits, and just fleeing like wild-eyed. It's just, all you needed was Godzilla behind them, chasing them out of the building like this, just Still, nothing had happened. I don't mean to tell you that bombs were exploding. Nothing. Zero. So I was one of the last to leave, as usual. And the roads were so packed. It was like people were leaving Hiroshima or Dresden or something. I mean, I've never been in a war, just the daily war of... Oh? Do you need me? Okay, one sec. Where was I? Did I deserve it? Was I getting my... When I was fearing for safety or my family or something, those moments when the panic was so high, where's the nanny? Where's the kids? Oh my God, I was thinking, did I deserve this? I thought, me personally, no, but generically, maybe so. What's provoked it was the spark, was the verdict, which was absurd, but that was just the spark. This had been said for years before, but the system plays unequally, and the people who were they burning down the Beverly Center, they have been victims of the system. Whether well-intentioned or not, somebody got the short shift, and they did. And so I started to absorb a little guilt and say, I deserve this. I don't mean to say that I deserve to get my house burned down. No. The us did. Whether well-intentioned or not, It was so awful out there. The devastation, it was heartbreaking. Seeing people reduced to burning down their own neighborhood, burning down our neighborhoods, I could see, but burning down their own, that was more dramatic to me.
So it was like a carnival out there, and I said to my friend Frances, you see this? And she said, girl, you should see that it's getting worse. And I said, girl, let me take my butt up there before something happened. And somebody threw a bottle, and then I felt like moist, and it was a tingling sensation, right? And I did it like this, and it was itching. And I say, Frances, I'm bleeding. So she walked me up to her house, and she said, lift up your gown, let me see. And she said, Elvira, it's a bullet. She said, lay down there, I'm gonna call St. Francis and tell him you've been shot and to send an ambulance. And she said, why you? You don't mess with none of these people. Why they gotta go and shoot you? So Francis said the ambulance be here in 15 minutes. I said, Francis, I cannot wait that. So I told my oldest son, I say, Amat, take care of your brothers. I'll be right back. Well, by this time, he was standing there. He was crying. All of them was crying. What I did for them not to see the blood, I take my gown and I cover it. And I didn't cry. That way they didn't get nervous. So we get in the car. I was going to drive, but Francis said, what you doing? I said, I'm driving. And she said, no, you're not. So, we had to be taking all the back streets, but Frances was so supportive because she said, you all right? You feel cold? You feel dizzy? The baby move? She said, you nervous? I said, no, I'm not nervous. I'm just worried about this baby. I said, I don't want to lose this baby. So there was a lot of cars. We had to be honking the horn. But finally, we get to St. Francis, and Francis tell the front desk office, she been shot. And they say, what's she doing walking? I said, I feel all right. So everybody stopped what they was doing, and they take me to the back room and put the monitor on the baby to see if the baby was fine, and they find the baby heartbeat. And as long as I heard the baby heartbeat, I was all right. As long as I knew whoever, boy or girl, it was all right. And matter of fact, my doctor, Dr. Thomas, he was there at the emergency room. What a coincidence, right? I was just looking for that familiar face, and as soon as I saw him, I said, well, I'm all right now, right? So he bring me this other doctor, and they say, Elvira, we don't know how deep is the bullet. We don't know where it went, but since that, we're going to operate on you, and we're going to take the baby out so you don't have to go through all that. They say, do you understand what we're saying? I say, yeah. And they say, okay, sign here. And I remember them prepping me, and I don't remember anything else. Nella, she likes company. So I remember Dr. Thomas say, you have a 6-pound, 12-ounce little girl, and he told me how much she weighed and her length, and he said, she born, she had the bullet in her elbow, but when we clean her up, we find out that the bullet was still between 2 joints. So we did operate on her, and your daughter is fine, and you are fine. Nella, she wants to show the baby. Jessica, Nella, bring the baby. Yes. We don't like to keep the little girls without earrings. We like the little girls to look like little girls from little. I pierced hers when I got out on Monday. By Wednesday, I did it. So she was 5 days. She was 7 days, and I pierced her ears. And the red band is just for, evil eyes. We really believe in Panama. In English, I can't explain too well. And her doctor, he told me, the bullet went through me, and it destroyed the placenta. And she caught in her elbow. And if she didn't caught in her elbow, me and her will be dead. So it's like, open your eyes. Watch what's going on.
It's all confusion. And the more we talk about it, the more facets of this confusion I can understand and see. I was coming back from having given a performance in Seattle, so I was in Los Angeles on the day of the riots, and a couple of friends of mine who are very involved in things having to do with civil rights said to me, you ought to stay. And I said, I can't. I have to, I'm in the middle of a tour, I can't. And so I was in the plane thinking, well, gosh, I didn't have any time to stay in Los Angeles. And what would I have done anyway, besides go to somebody's church and sing a few songs? What could I have done? except to talk or to sing to somebody who would listen, but I didn't think that people were in the mood to sing at that time. Of course, in the civil rights movement, you'd sing first, and then you'd organize, whatever protest was happening that day or week or whatever, and you'd sing at the end of it as well. I mean, you'd sing all through it. Black people have a great tradition of singing. This is how the spiritual came into being. That in order to deal with this unbelievable situation of being transported from one's homeland and being made a slave, we had to sing ourselves through it. We didn't sing ourselves out of it, we sang ourselves through it. But I think that if I were a person, already a teenager, sort of a youngster, 20 or something, and I felt that I were being heard for the first time, it would not be singing as we know it. It would be a roar. Oh, I think it would be a roar. Oh, it would come from the bottom of my feet. It would be like, I really think that it would be just like a lion just roaring. It wouldn't be words, it wouldn't be singing as we know it. It would be like the earth's first utterance. I really do feel so.
To use the language of decline, decay, and despair, rather than doom, gloom, and no possibility. Because I think any talk about despair is not about where you end, but rather where you start. Then the courage and the sacrifice come in at a level of hope, not optimism. Hope and optimism are different. You see, optimism tends to be based on the notion that there's enough evidence out there to suggest that things are going to get better. Much more rational, highly secular. Whereas hope looks at the evidence and says, that does not look good at all. It says, that does not look good at all. We gotta make a leap of faith beyond the evidence in order to create new possibilities based on visions that become so contagious so people can engage in heroic acts always against the odds. No guarantees whatsoever. That's hope. I'm a prisoner of hope, though. I'm gonna die a prisoner of hope. You were asking about the loss in Black life. For Black folk, our loss is the loss of feeling that we can be whole in a society that spends so much time trying to dehumanize us. The very feeling that we can be human has been truncated, and yes, we have created certain spaces where we can take off the mask and be ourselves. Our churches, our nightclubs, certain streets, but it's very circumscribed. And even still, these places, they're still haunted by the ghosts of white supremacy. Even as an act of liminality, letting it all hang out, the reason that I spend so much time with Chekhov and Tolstoy, he's much more nihilistic than Dostoevsky. And the reason that I love Tolstoy and Chekhov, the great brother Anton, the greatest artist of the 20th century. He only had a few pieces up to 1904, and then just like that, he stops. He starts 1900, and like Black folk, he's able to get at the depths of sadness and sorrow, of boredom and horror, of agony and anguish, and stay there. And still not come out with despair. He's still compassionate. He empathizes at such a deep level. The reason that he's comic and not tragic is that he allows himself to linger at the different manifestations of sadness and sorrow. He doesn't skip over. You were asking if the Negro spiritual is an adequate expression of our loss. Our problem is that we accept a certain Christian eschatology that wants to get to Easter too soon. Doesn't want to stay on the cross or on Saturday when God is dead. Catholic Church, they put up purple all over the church. No sense that Easter is coming, really. It's deep. Paul says in Romans 8, creation groweth and travaileth in futility. He's talking about Saturday. It's a Saturday situation. That's us. Saturday people. Now, Richard Pryor. The Pryor. He's talking about all kinds of sadness, and not just sadness, but melancholia. Shot through with black rage. Because black rage, it's a component of our black condition. But if white people experienced black sadness, it'd be too overwhelming for them. Very few white people could fully appreciate black sadness and continue to live the lives they live in. Living in denial. Oh, it couldn't be that bad. And yes, they do have their own forms of sadness. Tends to be linked with the American dream. But it's a very, very, very different kind of sadness. And don't get me wrong, Melville, Faulkner, Dreiser, Thomas Pynchon, Mark Twain, there are so-called great white American artists who get at exactly what I'm getting at. But Toni, who, in my opinion, is the greatest of the so-called black artists, she got it better than any of the novelists. But Coltrane understood it. To have that level of sensitivity and empathy in a not morally dead, but morally tone-deaf society. Tremendous creativity, Coltrane. And it was Miles and the others that loved him enough to allow him to fully express himself. 103rd Rhythm Band used to put it, let the brother express himself. He got some things to get out. You ask Miles, how come you let Coltrane play for an hour and 10 minutes? Miles said, that's how long it takes him to say what he has to say. Well, Miles, you only played for 12 minutes. Miles said, let the brother take his time. Let him blow say what he gotta say. Imagine what our black leaders would say. Get off the stage. My turn. Our academics. My turn. But Miles said, you gotta let him get the stuff out.
I knew something was wrong when they bashed in the right window of my truck. That's the end of what I remember as far as anything until 5 or 6 days later. They say it was in a coma. Morphine is what they were giving me for the pain, and it was just an interesting time. I think when it really dawned on me that something big might have happened was when very important people wanted to come in and say hi. The person I remember that wanted to come and see me, the very first person that I was even aware of who wanted to see me, was Reverend Jesse Jackson. And I'm just thinking, not this guy. That's the dude I see on TV all the time. And then it was a couple days later that Arsenio Hall came to see me. And then, about then, I started to get it. And by the time I left Daniel Freeman Hospital, I knew exactly what had happened. Except they wouldn't let me watch it on TV. I mean, they completely controlled that remote control thing. They had it on some movie station. But talking to Titus and Bobby and Terry and Lee, that's the 4 people who came to my rescue. They're telling me stuff that I would never even have known. Terry, I only met because she came as a surprise guest visit to the hospital. That was an emotional time. How does one say that someone saved my life? How do I express enough thanks for someone risking their neck for me. And then I was kind of, I don't know if afraid is the word. I felt a little awkward meeting someone who had saved me. Meeting them wasn't like meeting a stranger, but it was like meeting a buddy. There was a weird common thread in our lives. And here's 4 people who seated on TV and said, enough's enough, and came to my rescue. They say I drove the truck for what? About 100 feet or so? And it's been 17 years since I got out of high school. I've been driving semis since then. It's practically second nature. I mean, it doesn't take much brains to do it. But the doctors say there's this fight or flight syndrome. And I guess I was in flight, but Bobby Green saw that I was getting nowhere fast, and he just jumped right in and scooted me over and drove the truck. By this time, it was tons of glass and blood everywhere. Because I've seen the pictures of what I looked like when I first went into surgery, and I mean, it was a bloody mess. They showed me my hair when they cut off my hair. They gave it to me in a plastic bag, and I'm just thinking, and it was just long hair and glass and blood. Lee, that's a woman, Lee Ewell. She told me she just cradled me, cause there's no back seat in the truck. So here I am, just kind of on my knees in the middle of the floor, and then Lee is just covered with blood and Titus on one side, cause Bobby couldn't see out the window. The front windshield was so badly broken it was hard to see. And so Titus is standing on the running board telling Bobby where to go. And then Terry, she's in front of the truck, weaving through traffic, dodging towards cars to get them to kind of move out of the way, to get them to clear a path. And next stop was Daniel Freeman Hospital. Someday, when I get a house, I'm gonna have one of those rooms. And it's gonna be of all the riot stuff. And it's not gonna be a blood and guns memorial. It's gonna be a happy room. It's gonna be of all the crazy things I got. All the love and compassion and the letters from faraway places and the funny notes just framed, placed, framed things where a person could walk in and just have a good old time in there. Just like a fun thing. And there won't be a color problem in this room. You take the toughest white guy who thinks he's a badass and thinks he's better than any other race in town. You put him in a situation where he needs help. He'll take the help from no matter who the color of the person across. Because he's so self-centered and serving, he'll take it. And then, as soon as he gets better, he'll turn around and rag on him. What? I don't know what I want. I just want people to wake up. It's not a color, it's a person. So this room, it's just gonna be people. A wild thing. It'll be a blast. One day, it'll happen. Lord willing, it'll happen.
They accused my brother Lance of attempted murder. Of shooting at Reginald Denny with a shotgun. Apparently, he tried to blow up some gas pumps. My father got shot 11 years ago over a petty robbery. And their attitude back then was, we don't want to put your family through the trauma and the drama, just stir up some trouble. They basically feel that if it's a nigger killing a nigger, a black on black crime, they don't have any problem with that. Let it be a white victim. They're gonna go to any extreme necessary to basically convict some black people. Denny is white, that's the bottom line. If Denny was Latino, or Indian, or black, they wouldn't give a damn. They would not give a damn, because many people got beat. But you didn't hear about the Lopezes, or the Vacas, or the Quintanas, or the Tarvins. You didn't hear about them. But you heard about the Reginald Denny beating, the Reginald Denny beating, the Reginald Denny beating. This one white boy paraded all around this nation, go to every talk show there is, get paid left and right. Oh, Reginald Denny, this poor innocent white man. Oh, innocent! I don't see it on the innocent tip, because if that's the case, we're supposed to feel some sympathy, or some empathy towards this one white man, and it's like, where's that sympathy, or that empathy towards blacks? You know, like I said, we innocent. Like I said, you kidnapped us, you raped our women, you pull us over daily, you have us get out of our cars, sit down on the curb, you go through our cars, pull all our papers out, go through our trunks, and drive off. Don't even give us a ticket. You know, where's our justice? We innocent, where's our self-respect? But you want us to feel bad for this white man, this white boy. I'm like, please. It ain't happening here enough in the real brothers and sisters. That white man. Some feel you better be glad he's alive, because a lot of us didn't make it. They caught it all on camera, just a bunch of brothers beating the shit out of a white man. And they did everything in their power to convict these brothers. No justice, no peace. That's more or less, I guess, what you could say, my motto. It basically means that if there's no justice here, we won't give them any peace. Peace of body, peace of mind. You may have a dent in your head from now on in life. It may not be you, but it might be your daughter. Just somewhere in your family, you won't have no peace. When I finally get my house, I'll have just one room set aside. It'll be in my no justice, no peace room. Up on the wall, I'll have no justice, and over here, I'll have no peace. And I'll have my articles and clippings and everything. I guess so my son can see, so my children can know what it takes to be a strong black man. So they know what Daddy did, you know, if I'm still around, God willing. What you gotta do for your people, you know. When God calls you, this is what you gotta do. You either stand or you fall. You either be black or you die. We didn't make it to Beverly Hills, but that doesn't mean we're not going to. You keep it up. They're telling us, you burn down your own neighborhoods. And I'm like, first of all, we burned down these Koreans in this neighborhood. About 98% of the stores that got burned down were Korean. The Koreans was like the Jews back in the day. We kept them in check.
I felt kind of lonely. You know, in the store. So I said, well, I might need travel somewhere, you know? And I said, I probably gonna go see my mom. Or, you know, somebody. So I tried to go to Korea. Then I call a couple guys up, and they, I feel kind of lonely. I want to go Korea. See if I can change situation. And they didn't say nothing. It's kinda, you know, wondering thing. And one guy happened to tell me why you wanna go Korea for. You just came out of hospital. You know? That makes me wonder too. So I came home and I told my wife about it, and she didn't say nothing. It happens to among the Koreans, among Orientals, if they really love somebody or they really like somebody, they try hide certain things for different manner. And I accepted it as different manner. That's the way she loves me, and it's fine as long as I know and I have way to pay her back. That makes it even. And she didn't say nothing.
Besides, being his son, I also said I'm a medical student, and I'd like to know what the prognosis is, and I'd like to know what you've done. And they didn't tell me anything. And so, here you are, and he's in this condition. You don't know what he's already had. A bifrontal partial lobectomy. Well, the bullet passed through his temple side here, and it went through his left eye and lodged in his frontal lobe. It's in the past, in the old days, they did a lot of frontal lobectomies when they just removed that part of the brain for people who were very tense. And yeah, lobotomies, and the frontal lobe that's where your higher learning skills are, your willingness to do things, and your I guess your basic character. You know what, when you think and remember how things used to be, and you realize you can't do those things now, you look different, and you can't drive. I know he wants to drive.
He came to America 28 years ago. He was very high educated and also a very nice person to the people. And he has a business about 20 years ago. So he works hard and so hard. And he also donated a lot of money to the Compton area, and he knows the city council and the policemen, they know him. Then why did he have to get shot? I don't know why. So I'm just really angry, I cry most of my life, and this is a time when I cry a lot. So I go to the hospital and I stay with him, especially in the ICU room. They don't allow the family to stay there, but all the nurses know me, and every time I go, I bring some nice donuts to the nurses and doctors, and they find out how much I love him. So they just let me in, and I stay with him all night long. So I just feed him and stay till 8 o'clock at the night, and I spend all of my time and in my heart for him.
When he got shot, I guess he pressed on the accelerator and he ran into a telephone pole. And at that moment, there was an African-American lady behind in her car and witnessed when it happened. And it was an Afro-American who shot him. A man, from what I gather, from what I heard in things, the gunman, when he was at the stoplight, the gunman came up to the car and broke the driver's side window. And it wasn't one of those distant shots. It was a close range, almost execution style.
I remember going out, finally, on Saturday to do some cleanup work. And I remember very distinctly going down there and choosing to wear my clerical collar. Now, I haven't worn my clerical collar for about 7 7 or 8 years. You know, because, you know, people call me father, all that kind of stuff, and I didn't like that identification. But I remember doing that specifically because I was afraid that someone would mistake me for a Korean shop owner. And either berate me physically or beat me up. So I remember hiding behind this collar for protection. The reason why a minister should wear a collar is to proclaim, to let everybody know who he is and what he is. But I'm using it for protection, which I knew about that, and I said, gee. But I didn't take it off. Anyways, I went down and we were asked to go and pick up stuff from the Price Club, and so I had to go down to the bank and get money, and I went to the area. Also, I remember people complaining that Korean Americans didn't patronize black businesses, so I made sure that I went to black businesses for lunch and whatnot, wearing my collar and waiting around for food. And I remember just going to people and people just looking at me. And I usually kind of slump over when I walk, but in this case I kind of stood straight and held my neck high, and I made sure that everyone saw my collar. And I just went to somebody and who was standing next in line, and I said, "How are you doing?" Every place I went I got the same answer. "Oh, I'm doing all right. How are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just trying to make it." And there'd be a chuckle and agreement. And in every instance of these people that quote-unquote were supposed to be hostile on TV and whatnot, I felt nothing but warmth. Nothing but a sense of yeah, we should stick together. And nothing but friendliness that I felt. And this was a realization for me, that I had been out of touch with this part of the city. After a few days, I stopped wearing the collar, and I realize now that if there was any protection I needed, it was just whatever love I had to share with people. That proved to be enough. The love that God has taught me to share. This is what came out for me in the end.
So it was hard. Not only did they look up to me as their father, I know they saw me as their hero. And that's what hurts, is going through all this. I feel like, alright, I'm not their hero anymore.
Oh. Washington is, it's a place where ritual and custom does not allow them to talk about things that don't fit nicely into the formula. It's not enough to say that they're insensitive or they don't care. They really don't know. Not only did they not talk about it, I had to force myself on them in every way, and I did. Oh. I was outrageous in the things that I did. When I heard about a meeting at the White House to talk about a kind of urban package, I could not believe that they would even attempt to try to have this meeting without involving, if not me, the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, if not me, John Lewis, who's supposed to be a part of the leadership. He is a whip. It's part of the leadership, right? I heard about this meeting on television. And when I checked in with the speaker, I asked the speaker if there was a meeting going on. And he said, yes. And I said, I was not invited. Who was invited? And he goes, it's the leadership. I don't control the White House invitations. The president does the inviting, and it's not up to me to decide who's in the meeting. And I said, okay, well, what time is this meeting? He goes, oh, well, I'm on my way over there now. And I said, okay, I'll meet you over there, because I said I'm coming over. And I was angry. I went out and I caught a cab. I I drive, but I didn't drive because I didn't trust myself. I was angry. I went out and I caught a cab, and I told the cab driver, I said, take me to the White House, hurry, I'm late, I have an appointment at the White House. And he looked at me like, yeah, right. And some lady inside said, oh my God, we weren't expecting you. And I said, well, you better tell them I'm here. And somebody came out and said, right this way, Congresswoman. And I said, thank you. And the young lady ushered me inside, and I said, where is my seat? And people kind of looked at me, and I sat down. And everybody sat down, and when the president came in, everybody stood. And when the president came in, he looked, and when he saw me, he looked. He had kind of a quiz on his face, but he was nice. And he went around the room, and they started talking about this bill that was being proposed, this enterprise zone bill. And so after about 5 or 6 persons, I said, Mr. President, hi, I'm here because I want to tell you what I think is needed to deal with the serious problem of unemployment, hopelessness, and despair in these cities. I said Los Angeles burned, but Los Angeles is but one city experiencing this kind of hopelessness and despair. And I said we need a job program with stipends. You know, these young people really aren't in anybody's data or statistics. They've been dropped off of everybody's agenda. They live from grandmama to mama to girlfriend. These are the young people in our streets. They're 20, 21, 22 years old, and they've never worked a day in their lives. I said these are the young people in our streets, and they are frustrated, and they are angry. And I said, don't take my word for it. Ask Jack Kemp. And Jack Kemp goes, oh, that's not my department. That's better asked of Secretary Martin. Well, Martin was not there, but a representative was. And it turns out that this is a black man who didn't look black at all. And he looks at the president, and he goes, Mr. President, she's right. This country is falling apart.
I just feel like food is a way that people can come together. Everybody has to eat. And it's something that well, and when you do it well, it has value, you know, right at the heart of it. When you go buy your bread, you talk to the baker, you exchange, you feel loyalty, and you go back. And if something happened to him, you'd support him, and if something happened to you, he'd help you out. And when things fell apart in this country, in the 50s and the 60s, and well, everything became processed and frozen and canned, and all of a sudden people had televisions and TV dinners that, well, it just pushed people away from the table and out into the other rooms, and that we can't even begin to imagine what we've lost in that process. It's just, the tape is really a civilizing place. It's where a group comes and they hear points of view, they learn about courtesy and kindness, and, well, they learn about what it is to live in a community, I think. Live in a family first, but live in a bigger community, and, well, that's where it comes. Don't you think?
We spoke out on April 29th. It was some victory. It was burning everywhere. It was taking things, and nobody was telling nobody. It wasn't calling 911. Oh, they taking. It was yelling, hey, baby, give me some too. You know, I'm a little too old, but give me something. You know, it was the spirit. You know, they got what? 8 people? 8 people out of several thousand. They lost. Big time. It's basically that you as black people ain't taking this shit no more. Even back in slavery. Because I saw Roots when I was young. My dad made sure that when Roots came on the TV, he sat us down. So it's embedded in me since then. And just to see that, hey, this is for Kunta, this is for Kizzy, this is for Chicken George.
I don't care if you're black, if you're Asian or Caucasian. And many black people are telling me, no, we weren't here with the American dream. We are here as a slave. I understand. What I'm saying is, you are not slave at this moment. And I consider their resentment many times, but somehow African American people think they are still slaves. That's wrong. That's what's wrong with these people's mind, you know? Because 200 years ago in Korea, I know if my father was slave, because there was a slave system in Korea also. I know because my book telling me I was enslaved. I was one of the noble family because we have a history of a family book that goes back to 600 years ago. But what if some of these people don't have those kind of book, you know? Family tree. We can tell by the name. There's 8 last names that were slave. Chong, Bao, Chi, Chu, Ma, Hua, Pi. Oh, 7. Those last names are slaves' name. So you can tell that you were a slave 200 years ago. If anybody see Mr. Ma, any Korean, he was slave. I mean, their ancestor was slave. You know, matter of fact, my brother-in-law is Mr. Chung. My grandfather were getting mad because my sister were getting married with the Chung family. Talking about Korean Japanese who lives in Korea, I mean Japan. And their position is very similar to African American in the United States because they're brought by Japanese from Korea as a slave in Japan. And they had to live in Japan as a Korean Japanese. Unless they change their name, they cannot marry the Japanese, they cannot go to school, they cannot get a job because you're Korean. And there's 3 things they're good at it: crime, sports, entertainment. This sounds similar to you, right? Many famous singers are Korean. Even the Korean singers who lives in Korea, many times they go to Japan. Well, we are conquered by Japan, yeah? For 36 years, you know? That's why we brought in Japan as slaves. So we know how to feel about this. I just do not understand that people come up to. You don't understand how to become slave, you know? I do.
They lost $700 million. I was a cornerback. And I ran some track, and I played football, everything. I've been all into sports since I was 5, but this was bigger than any type of, victory I've ever been a part of. I have so many awards and trophies, but they're nothing compared to this. Now we got some weapons. We got our pride, we got our heads up, and our chests out. We got the cane truce jumping off. We got some weapons.
Did you know Jonathan Jackson? Because I did. And Jonathan Jackson was 17 years old. He was probably one of the most brilliant men that you could meet. He happened to be a science genius. He was not a gang member, by the way. But Jonathan Jackson went to a courtroom by himself and took over for that one glorious minute, and then named revolution and the freedom of his brother and the other people who were in prison and died that day. My question to you, young brother with a gun in your hand, tough and strong and beautiful as you are, do you think it'd be better if Jonathan Jackson were alive today, or that he died that day in Marion County? Me personally, I'd rather know Jonathan Jackson. That's what I'd rather do. I'd rather him be alive today, to be one of the leadership that we do not have, and to be dead and in his grave at 17 years old. So the question is, how are you going to push the revolutionary struggle from your grave? I'm talking really about strategy, not swashbuckling. I think that this idea of picking up the gun and going into this year without a plan, without any more rhyme or reason than rage, is bizarre. And so, it's foolish because I think that all one has to do is ask the Vietnamese or Saddam Hussein about the power and weaponry and arsenal of the United States government and its willingness to use it to get the understanding this is about. You're not facing some little Nicaraguan clique here. You're not in Havana in 1950-something. This is the United States of America. There is another country. There is another community that is more organized and armed. It is not only naive, it's foolish if one is talking about jumping out into the street,
and waving a gun and so forth and so on and doing that bad thing. Because you're not that bad. You see what I'm saying? You're just not that bad. You think you're bad. But I say again, ask what I'm saying about who is bad, and you'll get the answer. So, what I'm saying is, be conscious of what you are doing. If you just want to die to become a poster, go ahead and do that. We will all put you on the wall with all the rest of the people. But, if you want to affect change for your people, and you're serious about it, that doesn't mean throwing your gun. Matter of fact, I would definitely never tell anybody to do that. Not Black in America. But if you're talking about a war against the United States government, you better talk to Saddam Hussein. You better talk to the Vietnamese people, and the Nicaraguans, and El Salvadorans, the people in South Africa, and the people in other countries in Southeast Asia, and ask them what this country is capable of doing. So, all I'm saying is, if you're committed, if you seriously make a commitment, because that commitment must be based not on hate, but on love. And that's the other thing. My theme is that love of your people. You're gonna have to realize it's going to be a lifetime commitment. That the longer you live, the more you can do. So don't get hung up on your own ego and your own image and pumping up your muscles and putting on a black brayer, some kind of Malcolm X hat, or whatever other regalia and symbolic lesson you can put on your body. Think in terms of what you're going to do for Black people. I'm saying that these are the long haul. Because then, when you talk about being in a better position for a so-called armed struggle, at this point, you're talking about a piss-poor, ragtag, unorganized, poorly armed, and poorly led army. And it's not going to, we just be thrown back. It will be 20 more years trying to figure out what happened to Martin, Malcolm, and the Black Panther Party.
We just spoke out. We didn't have a plan. We just acted. We acted in a way that was just.
Dad, he won't replace the burnt out light bulbs. You know, he yells at the family for complaining and condemns everyone to live in darkness because he's too cheap to put in some light bulbs. That's what America feels like right now. Just ask him for some light bulbs, burnt out here and here and here. Couldn't we replace them with brighter ones? And a James Tyrone. He's too cheap. He rants on and on about everything he's always done for you, how he's lived his whole life just to support his family. But he won't replace the light bulbs. And he's grew up on a culture of success. So the only thing that was of any interest to this man has to be success, you know, which is America. Here's a man who has been a success. And of course he's at home with that. Right now in America, there isn't a family. We may have a good GNP, but not a family to come home to. Can't live in our own house. That's what the LA riots is about. We can't live. Our own house burning. This isn't somebody else's house. It's our own house. This is the city we are living in. It's our house. We all live in the same house, right? Start a fire in the basement, and, you know, nobody's going to be left on the top floor. It's one house. And shutting the door in your room, it doesn't matter. Fact is, you have a stronger sense of getting incinerated. You know, and the task is, you know, I mean, Eugene O'Neill wrote the classic play about the American dream.
One of the things that strikes me about the events of Los Angeles, for example, is the following. I have a friend, an African American. Was, I think, a second-year Harvard Law School student. And he was interning a summer in the late 70s out in LA at a big law firm. And every Sunday, the different partners would invite the interns to their home for tea or brunch or whatever. And this was a particular Sunday, and he was on his way driving to one of the partners' homes. There's a white woman in the car with them. I think she was an intern. I'm not positive of that. They were driving, and they were in the very, just about the neighborhood of the partner, obviously well-to-do neighborhood in Los Angeles. Suddenly, he looks in the rearview mirror. There is a police car. He pulls over. Police cars pull in front of him. Police jump out, guns, pull him out of the car, throw him to the floor, put a handcuff on behind his back. Run around to the woman on the other side. You're being held against your will, aren't you? Being held against your will. She gets hysterical, and they keep their guns pointed. Takes them 15 or 20 minutes to convince them. No, I'm an intern, law firm. On my way to a meeting, partners brunch. And after that, he finally convinces them of that, while his head is down to the ground, right? They say, okay, go ahead. They take the handcuffs off, they put their hats on, flip their sunglasses down, get in their police cars, and drive away, as if nothing happened. So my first reaction to that is, the events of April aren't new to Los Angeles, or to many other places. And my second thought is, what did the partner of that law firm do on Monday? Did the partner call the police commissioner? Did the partner call anybody? The answer is no. And it gets to, well, who's got a responsibility here?
I had a lot of anxieties about my boys. Stefan was at Stanford. Came home on weekend to sing with the band. Cops pulled him over. Pulled a gun at his head. How do you think a father feels? Stuff that happened to me 50 years ago, happening to my son? Man, he didn't tell me because it would make me sick. It would make me sick!
If I don't do what I'm doing for, say, justice, then when I do happen to die, pass away, I won't be able to really rest. I won't have no peace. Because I never did anything in terms of justice.
I mean, all of us have responsibility to try to improve the circumstances among the races of this country. A teenage mother's got a responsibility to realize that if she has more children, the life chances of those children are going to be less. A gang member's got to be held accountable for his finger on a gun, right? The corporate executive has got to be responsible for hiring and promoting diverse talent. And the head of the law firm's got to be responsible for that as well. But both the corporate executive and the law firm have to use their moral power. If that's not a total contradiction. I don't think it is. And the moral power of the law firm or corporation, when moments arise, such as my friend's face in the ground with a gun pointed at his head because he was in the wrong neighborhood and black, and the moral power of these institutions have to be brought to bear in the public institutions, which in many places are not fair, to put it mildly, right? And the application of the law, before which we are all in theory equal.
I think there are a lot of people from my generation and younger people. We're all waiting to have an to get those marching orders. We're all waiting. Just tell me, where is the show? What do I have to do? Just help organize me so that I can participate. Oh, well, we don't have the leaders. Well, why don't we have the leaders? Because people haven't been asked to step up in that way. It's true. We're all waiting to have an we're all waiting to help. But we just don't know how to. And it's so big. And it's happening so quickly. And we need to stop what's happening. And pretty soon, you realize that what's happening out there with the kids on the streets is it's my problem. and what's happening in the schools. It has to do with the future of our children. And I just feel like the best way to influence those kids is to help educate them in the public school system, to teach them to open their senses. Do you know that 85% of kids in this country don't eat one meal with their family a day? I think we forgot. I think it got thrown out. That idea of being around a table and well, we don't know what got thrown out with it. It's just, there are a lot of things that happen around a table. Even if you don't like what's on the table or you can't communicate with your family, you still have to wait until that guy stops talking so that you go pass the bread to another or use a napkin or a fork or a knife. And, well, those things are becoming very foreign to a lot of children. It's an offering to someone who needs food. It's healing. And I think that's what the table is. It's an offering to nourish people. And the more you're out there, the more you realize that what's upstream is coming downstream. The more you realize that, we're all sort of connected here.
Just to show you how we came up with the verdict. So we get in there and we say, let's get with the evidence. And we got through about half the testimonies because we started with Powell, and it was leading so much towards guilty. And someone says, wait a minute, let's stop, I'm tired. So the next day, things are going good, and someone says, oh man, I'm tired, I'm really tired. Let's just quit for the day and start again tomorrow. This is just too much on my head. I can't take it no more. All right, so I know what they're doing, because every time we stop, we go back another step. And you're not allowed to talk about the case outside, but we're human, so people would talk. But they would talk about personal feelings, and that's not talking about the trial, that's talking about the person. In the breakfast room, sometimes, look at Rodney King. Why should we spend all this money on someone like that? To me, what they're saying is this man, he did this to a police officer. Why should we spend all this money on someone like that? And they kept talking about how he had a parole hold. This stuff didn't have anything to do with the case. The case was his civil rights violated? It was not what kind of man Rodney King was or what kind of men the defendants were. So this stuff, it wasn't coming up in court, so it shouldn't be coming up here in this breakfast room. So the next day, we get in there, and we're going through the evidence, and this lady says, oh my God, I think I'm getting a headache. I think I'm getting brain dead. Let's just quit. I said, wait a minute, I don't want to go back to the hotel. I said, there's nothing to do there. I said, I hate going there. So the foreman says, okay, why doesn't everyone just stay here and we can all do what we want? So we get back in, and I'm arguing with this one guy on this PCP, and he's saying stupid stuff that didn't have anything to do with the case. So I said, wait a minute. I said, I do not trust you. I do not trust your judgment. I said, you're bullcrapping me right now. I said, on this book, it says this. So someone says, wait a minute, Maria, why don't you trust him? What's the matter? I said, I heard the comments that's going around here. I said, it's not being directed towards me. What do you mean? Why should we go through a case like this for a man like that? If you felt that way, you should have told the judge that at the beginning. I said, you should not be bringing that up here. So he looks at me, and he turns really, really red, and the black guy jumps in. Maria, I think you're just being too sensitive about this thing. The man was just playing. We've been joking since we've been here, and you have no right to talk to him like that. And that just broke me because I didn't expect that to come from him. And that gave everybody else reason to jump on me. And everyone's like, yeah, you're just stirring up shit. So I got up and I went to the bathroom and cried. So I stayed in the bathroom. I'm washing my face, and I tried to come out all strong, and I tried to smile. But when I came out, and they all hugged me, and everyone's like, oh, we're sorry, we didn't mean it. And now they're really being sincere with me? Well, at that point, I just broke down because everybody trusted me as a person, and everyone came out of their prejudice. So the next day is when we had our AA meeting. My God, when you hear it, you're going to say, my God. So, we get in there, and we're going through the evidence, and this guy raises his hand, and he says, I just feel like I agree with Maria because I work at the post office, and I had said from the beginning, I don't think people are telling the truth when they say they're tired. They tell me I got 2 hours of overtime after I work an 8-hour shift. I'm tired too, but I don't go home. And I still stay here, and I do a damn good job at it. And I said, this is our job, and we are not tired. So this other guy jumps in, and he goes, I agree with Maria. I had told y'all, I said, don't be messing around here. And if you're tired, then take your asses home. We got 3 alternates that would like to take your place. So if you're tired, then take your ass home. And so the black guy jumps in, and he goes, now let me tell you something. I have not slept in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, do you hear me? I have not had 1 bit of sleep. And I've just broken out in hives all over it. And he lifts up his shirt, and he's just red all over, hives all over his body. And I don't appreciate you. And he runs out crying. And this real high-class lady going like this, and she goes, oh, I hate arguing. Please, if anybody writes a movie, if anybody makes a book, please don't nobody say nothing about my family. And she starts confessing something about her family. We had no idea about it. Why is she telling us now? Oh, please don't put it in the book. And now the black guy got rushed to the hospital because he was about to die and have a heart attack. But after that day, which you noticed, everybody broke this stuff, didn't have nothing to do with the trial. But what happened was everybody came out of their prejudice, their feelings about the defendant, their guilty, whatever they thought on their mind that was guilty. What I'm saying is people's personal beliefs, their personal guilties got put aside, and it was washed away. Once we took that away, we were able to come up with a verdict for all 4 of them. The verdict on Powell was guilty. No one cried. No one argued. We just looked at the evidence. Okay, such and such said this, just like we were in school. It was simple, like boom, boom, boom. It took us 4 days, 5.5 days to get to that AA meeting. Once we got to that AA meeting, it took us 2 days to come up with a verdict for all 4 of them.
When I was in Korea, I used to watch many luxurious Hollywood lifestyle movies. I never saw any poor men, any black, maybe one housemaid. Until last year, I believed America is the best. I don't deny that now because I'm victim. But as the year ends in '92 and we were still in turmoil and having all the financial problems and mental problems, then a couple months ago, I really realized that Korean immigrants were left out from the society and we were nothing. What is our right? Is it because we are Korean? Is it because we have no politicians? Is it because we don't speak good English? Why? Why do we have to be left out? We are not qualified to have medical treatment. We are not qualified to get food stamps, no GR, no welfare, anything. Many Afro-Americans who never worked, they get at least the minimum amount of money to survive. We don't get any because we have a car and we have a house and we are high taxpayers. Where do I find justice? Okay, black people probably believe they won by the trial. Even some complain it's only half, right? Justice was there. But I watched the television that Sunday morning, early morning as I started watching all day. They were having party, and then they celebrated all the South Central, all the churches. They finally found that justice exists in this society. Then where is the victims' rights? They got their rights by destroying innocent Korean merchants. they have a lot of respect, as I do, for Dr. Martin King. He's the only model for black community. I don't care Jesse Jackson. But he was the model of nonviolence. Nonviolence? They like to have his spirits. What about last year? They destroyed innocent victims. And I wonder if that is really justice to get their rights in this way. I was swallowing the bitterness, sitting here alone and watching them. They became all hilarious. And in a way, I was happy for them, and I felt glad for them. At least they got something back, you know? Just let's forget Korean victims or other victims who were destroyed by them. They have fought for their rights for over 2 centuries, and I have a lot of sympathy and understanding for them. Because of their effort and sacrificing, other minorities, like Hispanics or Asians, maybe we have to suffer more by the mainstream, you know? That's why I understand. And then I like to be part of their enjoyment. But that is why I had mixed feelings as soon as I heard the verdict. I wish I could live with blacks, but after the riots, there was too much difference. The fire is still there. How do you call it? 불이 붙이는 거. Igniting fire. It can burst out any time.
So, a lot of the times when I brought up ideas to my homeboys, they say, Twilight, that's before your time. That's something you can't do now. When I brought up the truce back in 1988, that was something considered before its time. Yet, in 1992, we made it realistic. So to me, it's like I'm stuck in limbo. Like the sun is stuck between night and day in the twilight hours. You know? I'm in an area not many people exist. Nighttime to me is like a lack of sun. And I don't affiliate darkness with anything negative. I affiliate darkness of what was first, because it was first. And relative to my complexion, I am a dark individual. And with me stuck in limbo, I see the darkness as myself. I see the light as knowledge and the wisdom of the world and understanding others. And I can't forever dwell in darkness. I can't forever dwell in the idea of just identifying with people like me and understanding me and mine. So, twilight is that time between day and night. Limbo. I call it limbo.